So today, we've got a really fascinating story. It's about a man who lived and breathed numbers, a statistician. But what happens when he faces a crisis that numbers just can't solve? This is a deep dive into that connection, between our physical health and our emotional lives.
Wow. This quote, it really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's getting at this idea that maybe the real healing happens in those places that you just can't measure with data. Keep this thought in the back of your mind, because we're definitely going to circle back to it.
So this is the big question, right? What does happen when a guy who relies on data gets thrown into a situation that totally defies it? It's like a collision of two different worlds. You've got the hard, cold facts on one side, and then you've got this messy, internal, emotional experience on the other. And our guy, he's stuck right in the middle.
Okay, so Section 1, A Statistician's Dilemma. Let's meet the man at the center of this story. He's a professor of biostatistics. I mean, his entire life, his whole career, is built on logic, patterns, and cold, hard evidence.
And here are his stats. Literally, he's 46, a professor in New Delhi, and if you just look at the numbers, he seems pretty healthy, right? 165 centimeters, about 60.5 kilos, not diabetic, no high blood pressure. This is a guy who gets these metrics, who trusts them.
But then, his body started sending out some major red flags. And we're not talking about subtle hints here. These were the classic, you can't ignore them signs of obstructive jaundice. Yellowing eyes, dark urine, intense itching all over. Basically, something was blocking the flow of bile from his liver, and it was serious.
Now, to really get this story, you have to understand the man himself. He described himself as socially dyslexic. It's not that he didn't like people, he just found it hard. He was a classic introvert, pretty stoic, the kind of person who tends to just bottle everything up inside. All right, Section 2, the path less traveled. So here he is, with this really serious diagnosis, and he's at a major crossroads. The choice he's about to make, well, it goes against pretty much everything you'd expect from a data-driven guy like him. Okay, so check this out. These were his two options. Path number 1, the conventional route, came from a specialist friend. Get to a hospital now. They needed to run tests, look for things like gallstones or even, cancer. Then there was path number 2, a completely different way of thinking, inspired by a friend's own story. This path was all about avoiding invasive stuff, focusing on detox, and, this is the key part, pursuing emotional release. And unbelievably, against all his statistical training, he went with the second option. And this is where things get really interesting. We're moving into Section 3, connecting body and mind, because this holistic approach wasn't just about the physical symptoms. It started digging for clues, for connections between what was happening in his body and what was going on in his mind. Okay, so his lab results had one little clue. His TSH levels were a bit high, which points to a slightly underactive thyroid. But instead of just saying, okay, a thyroid issue, the holistic view connected that dot to something else entirely. His tendency to suppress his emotions. The idea was that all this unresolved disappointment, this resentment he never expressed, was literally showing up in his body. His stoic personality wasn't just who he was, it was part of the puzzle. So that brings us to Section 4, the healing process. You're probably wondering, what does this actually look like? How do you even begin to treat a serious physical problem with a non-invasive approach? Well, the physical side was, surprisingly simple. It was all about the fundamentals. Things like hydration therapy with sparkling water, giving his liver support with supplements like glutathione and vitamin C, and a morning detox routine with wheatgrass powder. That's it. No drugs, no invasive procedures. Now look at these numbers. This is where his faith was really tested. He starts with a bilirubin level of 7, but 1 week in, it actually goes up to 10. Can you imagine? For a statistician, this is a nightmare. The data is trending the wrong way. This was the make or break moment, but he stuck with it. And then, look what happens. Just 1 week later, it drops to 5. And by early October, it's down to 2.9, almost back to normal. What a turnaround. But here's the thing. This was about way more than just the physical side. Once his body started to stabilize, the real work could begin. The idea was that the physical detox basically unlocked the door for a much deeper emotional detox. And they had actual techniques for this. This wasn't just vague feel your feelings advice. It was structured work. There were guided techniques to help him release old suppressed memories. There was affirmation therapy, which was all about helping him find his voice and learn to forgive. And then there was journaling, giving him a safe space to finally unpack all the stuff he'd kept buried for so long. Okay, so we've reached section 5, recovery beyond numbers. The lab reports looked better. That's great. But so what? What did that actually mean for him in his day-to-day life? Because the real recovery, well, it was about so much more than just numbers on a page. I mean, the transformation was incredible. The obvious physical stuff, the yellow skin, the itching, gone. But it was everything else. His energy came roaring back, he had mental clarity again, he was sleeping well, he had an appetite, all those basic things we take for granted. But it wasn't just about getting back to normal. He wasn't just not sick. He actually found his passion for his work again, for teaching and research. This wasn't just a cure, it was a total renewal. And that brings us right back to where we started, with this quote. Only now it doesn't sound like a theory, does it? It sounds like the conclusion. His entire journey just beautifully illustrates this idea that true health isn't just about getting your lab numbers in the right range. It's about vitality and purpose, and healing all those parts of ourselves that you can't see and you certainly can't measure.
So, I guess we're left with this final question to chew on. We live in a world that screams trust the data at us from every angle. But this story, it kind of pushes back on that, doesn't it? It makes you ask, when you're facing your own crisis, what data are you going to choose to trust? The numbers on the page, or those unspoken truths you feel deep inside? It makes you wonder, maybe the most important data points are the ones we can't actually see at all.